Welcome to the D&D Fitness Radio Podcast, brought to you by your hosts, Don Saladino from New York City and Derek Hansen from Vancouver, Canada. In episode 20, we speak with Chic Daniel, Hollywood's godfather of tactical and technical consulting. So let me start. I just wanted to tell Don how I met and know you, Chic. I think it was around 2006, 2007. We were in Spain. I had just flown like overnight across the Atlantic, and they lost my luggage, and I'm in Madrid, and I'm in a bad mood. And then they say, oh, you got to go ride in a van for 3 hours to the middle of nowhere. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then I sit down, and you're next to me. I ask you, we talk a bit, and I'm like, wow, this guy's really cool. This is going to be a great trip. So Chic was basically brought in as a kind of a weapons consultant, combat, consultant for Benicio del Toro for the Che Guevara movies, and had a great time. We spent some time together in some secluded areas, and just probably I learned a lot in a short period of time from Chic. And he's been involved in obviously the policing side, tactical side, also consultant, actor, knows the whole Hollywood side of things, work with some amazing people. And if I had to bring one person into a zombie apocalypse, it's going to be Chic. I just feel like I would feel the most secure with this guy by my side, or me standing behind him or something. And so that's how I met Chic, and that's how I know him. And he was involved in some of the Sicario stuff that Benicio's done, and anything involving tactical, whatever. Chic's the man. So
what about that? What about that scene where Benicio's firing off the pistol like 100?
Yes, absolutely. We spent earlier in the day at a range, an indoor range, with him practicing that, so that when the time came, he would look as good as he did. And obviously, Benicio looks good, doing pretty much everything. So it came across quite cool. And I have heard from many people saying they have never seen that in the film before, and that was kind of the idea. He always has very specific things that he wants to do. And once again, I think that was a great touch for a movie like Sicario 2.
Wow. I mean, it sounds, pretty unusual. I mean, how do you feel like your career really went from, law enforcement, military, et cetera, but to get into this acting end of it? I mean, was that something that you expected to do? I mean, that seems a little bit off the beaten path from where your background was.
Well, absolutely it was. I mean, I did the wannabe actor in high school, the plays, all that. But at the same time, I was on the football team and doing that side of it. So for some reason, I never realized that acting was a possibility as a career for me. So I never pursued it. Got in, was in the military for 3 years and got out, came on the police department. And along the way, fell into a couple of small little, background things. First thing I ever did was a show called Jake and the Fat Man. It was kind of a detective thing that took place in Hawaii. Obviously, it was all filmed here. But then in the early 90s, I met Steven Seagal kind of at the beginning of his career, and began helping him on a couple of movies. And all of a sudden I said, wow, this could be kind of fun. So it was a kind of like a backdoor entrance into the world. And then once you work on one film, you meet 100 plus people, and they all go in different directions when that movie's over. And then you get a call from somebody who goes, hey, you want to come work on this? And I said, absolutely. And for many years, I was doing it while I was still on the police department. So it was a very fun part-time job. And then the closer I got to retirement on the police department, it was starting to pick up. So then it just became a transitional job instead of retiring and then going, now what am I going to do? I literally never missed a beat as far as working, and I never looked back. It's been wonderful.
That's unbelievable. So Seagal, I was just
come
on, man. That was right on the tip of my tongue. It was funny. Who was speaking about this the other day? I think it was I want to say Joe Rogan was discussing Seagal, and I don't really listen to Joe much, but it happened to be the only interview I think I've ever listened to Joe Rogan on.
Right.
Happened to talk about Seagal, and I think they were arguing whether he was a true martial artist or not. What the hell do I know? I mean, I was a white belt when I was like 6 years old. So that's about.
That's right. That's right. Well, I can believe me. I can vouch for that. I went to Japan with him on 2 separate occasions,
right,
to the dojo there that he owned. He was the first non-Japanese to ever own a dojo in Japan.
Right. And
those people, they look at him as a god over there. They really did at that time. And all of that Aikido was very legitimate. That is real. So anybody that says, "Oh, it's not," they don't know what they're talking about, because
he was huge. He was huge at one point. I mean, when the Hard to Kill movies came out,
absolutely,
I mean, this was such a different look and feel. It was almost like this big, normal-looking guy with long hair coming in and just whooping everyone's ass within a few seconds. It was almost. I remember.
No, I still remember the first time. His first movie was Above the Law. And I remember going to the theater, and I'm sitting there watching that, and I just kept going, who the hell is this guy?
Yeah.
It was just so different from any other martial arts movie that I'd ever seen.
Yeah, I definitely remember that. But so now in your career, I mean, so you've got this incredible background. I mean, history of military and police force and movies. I mean, what's the objective now? Like, what is there? I mean, you've pretty much done it all. I mean, are there any no, seriously.
Well, yeah. No, actually, I've got a writing partner, and we've written a script, a law enforcement-based script, and it is currently at a production company, and they're looking for a showrunner. And once we find a showrunner, then it's going to be pitched to a network, and they seem to be very confident that it could go forward. So we'll see what happens. This is one of those businesses that everybody's trying to make a show, but what you do is you do the best you can, and then you see what happens. It's so much of this is about relationships. It's like many jobs. It's not just what you know, but it's who you know. And we've been fortunate to have some pretty decent people on our side. So we'll see what happens.
Can you discuss your training? I mean, obviously you've had to be incredibly active your entire life. Can you just discuss with us like how it started, the progressions, how things have evolved, et cetera?
Right. I mean, the majority of, let's say, the training that I received, that I've been able to translate to film, all came through the police department. I spent 12 years working our special weapons and tactics team here in Los Angeles. And that really was the beginning of a very consistent and long-term training that I involved myself in. On the one side as a need, I had to. And on the other, it was something that I'd always been physically active, and here was an opportunity to continue that. And thank goodness I continue it to this day. But it was, to work SWAT, it's not like you're having to do anything crazy other than, your fast rope rappel out of helicopters down the side of buildings. Obviously, lots of firearm training, but a lot of physical training, a lot of, not only the equipment that you're wearing, but often it's that plus carrying weights and moving through restricted areas, trying to build up as best you can your ability to sustain in high tension and stressful circumstances, and that you don't physically break down. And I don't mean from having to run up, 10 stories of stairs, not that, but when you're out there for 12, 14 hours and you've got all this equipment on and it's 100 degrees out, you better be in shape or you're going to be falling by the wayside. So it was, and you're also in a group, much like many of the units in the military, to where everybody is on the same page. They have the same mindset, and they want to be their best when the time comes. And training is how you get there, because when the day comes that you need to do something, it all comes back to how you trained. So we would go out of our way to spend a lot of time, obviously physically training, but that's cardio, that's trying to get strong, try to stay lean. Some of the guys were bigger, but I always wanted to try to stay a little bit leaner without carrying too much weight. And then the rest of it is really about tactics. It's about firearms training, and it's about working as a team to solve whatever the logistical issue is at the moment, whether it's a barricaded suspect, it's somebody who has hostages, it is a foot pursuit, it's a shooting that happens to go down that you're suddenly in the middle of. So it's all about trying to, for me, constantly play through in my head circumstances and what if. What if this happens? What am I going to do? My partner, we would be driving along, and we used to play these little games. Okay, we're coming around this corner, and boom, somebody comes out and takes a shot at us. What are we going to do? How are we going to react to it? Because if and when it does happen, you don't want to have to stop and start thinking about it then, because it could be too late. So it's like anything. It's like training for a marathon. You've got to continually train to do the marathon. You can't just show up one day and go, oh, I'm going to run 26 miles. There's probably some people that can do that, but most people can't, and the end result won't be good.
Yeah, but you know what? It's funny. You're just talking about is even as much training and you can prepare, but game day just looks and feels different. And I know with specific races that I've run in, or even when I used to box a lot. Like I remember going into boxing training thinking I was in phenomenal shape. You know, when I was younger in college, I ran a 4:52 mile, and I'm like, oh, I'll be able to get in the ring and be fine. And I remember the first time when my boxing coach was ready to get me sparring, I remember being 2 rounds in feeling like I was going to almost pass out. So
that's it. Yeah, that's the adrenaline. Yeah,
right,
yeah.
So I couldn't even imagine you guys. I mean, being in situations as SWAT in the military when, you train for these circumstances, but out of nowhere, you know, a gun gets fired and that heartbeat's going to jump, 50 beats. And
no, it does. No, believe me, it does. But at some point, you realize what's going on, and you stop, take a deep breath, compose yourself, and continue going, because it's one of those, you spend all this time training and getting ready for it, and now it's happening. Let's show up and do what we do, and do the best we can for the citizens of LA at that time and for your partners.
Yeah, I mean, also, your team. I mean, you're on there as nervous as someone might get. You can't let your team down, right? I mean, that's
right.
Part of it all. They're relying on you to be able to protect them as much as they're protecting you. So, you've got a huge, you got a huge obligation there. I couldn't even imagine. Give you a lot of credit, and I'm sure a lot of people should be tipping their cap to you and your partners right now for the seriously, for the service that you did. People don't actually thank our military service or our police or our SWAT enough. I mean, they're out there risking their lives. Yeah, it's their job, but they're out there to protect and serve you. And I just think there should be a little bit more credit given there. So,
Well, thank you. Unfortunately, more often than not, all the negative is broadcast, but not the positive. And I don't care what industry you're in, you're going to have people that make mistakes. And I would pretty much bet that 99% of the mistakes that police officers they make is in the process of trying to do the right thing. And either because of lack of training, or they get scared, something happens that then they have to live with the rest of their life, or look at getting indicted and possibly going to prison. So
right.
Yeah.
Lot of pressure there.
And the one thing that I learned from Chic, and I still can see him doing certain things, like he's extremely meticulous in everything he does. And I think I picked up on that. And I think it really lends itself to the film industry, because I know Benicio is very, very meticulous too. And he wants everything to be a certain way and look a certain way and be realistic. And so bringing Chic into the fold was a natural for him, because everything you do, and even if we talk about safety, because I was thinking about like Brandon Lee for some reason the other day and going, wow, that was such a horrible tragedy with the firearms, right? And I remember I talked to Chic about how important the safety and the preparation and all the stuff he's been talking about is. So,
no, that is. And unfortunately, until I would say maybe the last 10 years, well, certainly since Brandon Lee's death, but really 10 years, the safety on the set, it didn't have the priority that it should have. There's a belief by many people that because they say that this is a blank, referring to a round that's going to be in a gun on a set, that nothing comes out the end of the barrel. And every time that I take actors out to teach them, I show them with a blank gun, a few inches away from the target, and they see it'll still blow a hole in the target.
Right.
Because you still have all the gases coming out of that. The only thing you don't have is a projectile. And you should see the look on some of these actors' faces, because up to this point, no one had ever told them that. They didn't realize how dangerous they are. And I told them, I said, look, when you're on set, it's your responsibility to ask some of these questions. Things start happening fast. Sometimes people start going too quickly, and they might forget to tell you something, whatever it is. If you don't have to be pointing right at somebody with a gun that's going to fire a blank, you cheat it. You aim 2 or 3 feet to the left or to the right. And if they are over your shoulder, you make sure the distance is sufficient, that everybody's safe. It's all these basic little safety procedures that when they're instituted, everybody on set feels good. They know that everybody's going to go home with all their fingers and toes, and they're hopefully going to get the shot that they're looking for.
Do you think ever, I mean, you've trained for this your entire life, and you look at someone in their craft, I don't care if they're a trainer, a power lifter, a martial artist, this is something that they've trained for their entire life. A stuntman may have years and years of this experience. Do you feel like sometimes, and this isn't me speaking bad about actors, I'm not knocking them, but sometimes they try and get so involved into a role and for it to being lifelike that they forget that, listen, this could be dangerous. This isn't something that I practice. And even by bringing in someone like yourself who is an expert in this area, there's just certain things you can teach and you can't teach. You know what I'm saying? It's like that Wall Street guy who wrote a book who hired the Navy SEAL to come in and live with them because he wanted to feel tough and he wanted to, show that he can handle the training. But stick the guy in a combat, he'd probably get the crap kicked out of him in 3 seconds. It's almost a little bit of a joke. Do you ever look at these situations and you're like, because I know I do, I'm like, calm down. Like this is not what you do for a living. You're an actor and you're phenomenal at it, but you're not a Navy SEAL. Like, as much as you want to be or believe that you want to be, if we stuck you into the field of battle, you would crumble, you would fold, and you'd go running home with your tail between your legs. How does that happen? How do you respond to that? Are you ever like back off a little bit, like take it easy?
I've had to do that many times. My advantage is when they give me several days, sometimes a week, sometimes 2 weeks prior to the filming to spend time with these actors, we have all these conversations, and I make sure that they're aware of how serious what they're going to do truly is. I said, you want to play you're a cop or a SWAT officer or military or whatever it might be, you've got to understand the responsibility that comes with that position. This is not a joke. And if you take it that way, there's 2 problems. Somebody's going to get hurt, and it's going to come across as a joke. If you're doing a comedy, that's wonderful. But if you're doing a serious drama, why not make it as real as you can and as safe as you can at the same time? But there are people, again, actors are like our general population. You've got people that are very smart, and you've got people that aren't necessarily very smart. And you can't always teach common sense. You try to pass it on. You try to explain to them. But I've seen some people, when they're trying to do their acting side of it, they forget about that gun in their hand. I've actually stood there and watched somebody rub the gun upside their head as they're talking. Thank God there was nothing in it.
Jesus.
I was able to show them on replay. I said, what is this? He goes, I totally forgot I had the gun in my hand and this kind of thing. So it's all about that type of a thing. And before any scene is done where there's going to be gunfire, we walk through it. We have a safety briefing. If there's stunts involved, the stunt coordinator's talking about it. The first AD who runs the set, he has input. I have my input so that everybody knows what's going to happen. We know where the cameraman's going to be. If he's moving, is he going to end up in front of this, this double-barrel shotgun or an AR-15, or is he going to be off to the side where everybody's safe? So that's why we rehearse and rehearse and rehearse, and then when you get ready to do it, everybody will be safe.
Do you feel like special effects now and CGI can enable people to be a lot safer? I mean, I'm not mentioning names, but I know specific clients that I've worked with will insist on doing specific stunts when the reality is they probably don't really have to. Does that make sense? And I'm like, why?
No.
Like, these stunt people get really messed up. I mean, unfortunately, I mean, we even saw it. I mean, God rest her soul. The poor motorcycle stunt person who ended up losing her life. And I know the entire staff, the set, Ryan, everyone was absolutely devastated. It was a tragedy. But this was a woman who was trained to ride a bike, and it was a freak accident, but stuff happens. You know, life is fragile. We all know that. And I think we got to respect things a little bit more. What do you feel like? Are you just saying to yourself, just computer generate this? Like stop. This is going to be overstepping.
Well, I always tell actors, I said, look, there's a reason that they have a stunt double here for you. Some of these stunts are very dangerous. Some of them, it's not that you're going to run down the block and make a right turn or whatever. I mean, most people are quite capable of doing that. I'm just a big believer that your livelihood is your health and your safety as an actor. So when it comes to some of these, you know, jumping off a building or across a building, I've seen actors do this where they're jumping from building to building and they're 5 stories up. And I'm just going, really? Yeah, I said, they're never going to know who this is. They will have you land on the other side and run like you're going to take off here. Do you really have to do that? God, I want to be the one that's doing it. I said, all right, but guess what? If you miss that building over there, you're done. You are really done. And sometimes they get it, sometimes they don't. And they get caught up in the reality of what they want to be in this, which I respect that. I respect the people that work as hard as they do. And I've worked with a number of these very high profile actors that they want to do their own stunts. And I just kind of shake my head sometimes. And I said, okay, you know, whatever you do. That's one of the things I enjoy so much about working with Benicio del Toro. He knows when to say, hey, let's get the stunt guy in here to do this because it's not safe. There's a likelihood that I can get hurt doing this. So why do that?
Right. He's one of the best actors I've seen. So, and he's also
absolutely.
I had the privilege of meeting him through Derek. So, I mean, the guy's obviously takes his craft really seriously, and I respect that. I respect, you know, when watching Sicario, I'm sure someone like that, just how he holds the gun, how he sits at the table before he had that execution scene where he executed the guy. I mean, I'm sure he studied everything down to how he was holding the gun, how he was. I mean, he's such a fanatic when it comes to that stuff, and I respect that. I just, you know, I had a little reality check recently. I do this stupid, fun little thing called Training on Broadway, where it's like workouts on Broadway in New York. You know, I live right in the city, and my business is right here. And I was doing things, but we were doctoring them up. So we'd be hanging from a fire escape, but the fire escape, you know, but it wasn't 5 stories off the ground. You know, you're like 10, 15 feet off the ground, where if I land, I'm going to roll an ankle, and that's the worst of it. And then people started commenting to me and like, you're going to get hurt. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm not going to get hurt. But someone passed a comment. They're like, yeah, but what if some kid tries to do this? And then I turned around and I was like, you know what, man, I couldn't live with myself. So I kind of, it became, just bringing barbells onto the street and dumbing it down a little bit. But, you know, I guess that's part of Hollywood. If someone, like you said, is going to be dumb enough to go and try and copy something and they're going to get messed up and they're going to get hurt. I mean, we've heard terrible stories in the past in certain movie scenes, people trying to emulate that and getting killed. And it's obviously a terrible thing, but, you know, I guess that's life, right?
Yeah, it is. And I remember when the show Jackass first aired, and they were having a lot of people get seriously hurt because they tried to duplicate some of these stunts that these guys were doing. And part of Jackass was them doing them and getting hurt. But people that don't have anyone there to give them a little bit of guidance, it can be quite severe. I remember watching a guy literally shoot a watermelon off his friend's head with a .50 caliber sniper rifle in real life. And I'm thinking, are you freaking crazy? I mean, okay, just a little bit off on this thing and your buddy's head is going to look like that smashed watermelon. But oh well, you can't tell him, you know.
I'm sorry I'm laughing because as soon as you mentioned Jackass, I thought of the one where guys put the Matchbox car up one of the guys' asses.
Yeah.
And he went to the doctor. There's this Indian doctor. And the guy's going, I feel like something's up my butt. And the Indian doctor's trying to be all serious, and they have a camera on him. And it's like, what happened? He goes, well, I passed out at a party, and I woke up, my pants were around my ankle, and they did an x-ray. And you see a condom up his ass with you can see the four wheels. And so you're talking, and I'm dying right now. I can't even take it.
I love it.
I mean, that's something.
Yeah, well, that's not. That's definitely what I hope people didn't copy. It's like, yeah.
And then, ironically, one of the guys on Jackass dies from speeding in his freaking car. And that's like, it's just the irony of it all. I mean, I will not. I mean, that's the one. My son is 9 years old. He watches Deadpool. Call me a terrible father for that. The one thing I want to watch is Jackass, because I just don't want him. I know how he is as a young kid, and I know he'll try and do some of this stupid stuff. But
no, even as an adult watching Jackass, I literally was kind of sort of closing my eyes and looking away. But it's just like you're driving by the accident, and everybody slows down to look. You just do,
Yeah, I mean,
there's got to be some great examples. I know you talk about Benicio, and he's the consummate professional. But are there other actors you've worked with who've taken your training and really taken it to the next level? Because I remember hearing about Steven Seagal being very, very competent with firearms. Somebody was mentioning that. So, are there other people that have really taken it to your training?
Well, pretty much everybody. I mean, Steven certainly. He had some firearms background to begin with, and all I helped him do was kind of perfect it. And he was an extremely good shot. But I would say almost everybody that I've had the pleasure of working with did a movie with Tom Cruise called Collateral. Yeah. And if you watch that, Tom was very good with a gun in that, extremely good. I did the early part of the training, and there was another guy that was brought in to finish the training. But Tom was so meticulous in everything that he does. Keenan Ivory Wayans, I did a movie with him, and the same thing with him. He wanted to know everything about it, how everything is done. Ellen DeGeneres, I taught her to shoot for a movie that she did many years ago. Wow. And again, we sat down, we talked about guns. She wanted to know how the gun itself operated. So we went through the entire process. She was very nervous at the beginning, but by the time we were finished with the training, she was very confident with what she was doing. Rosie Perez, the same thing. Did a thing called Pineapple Express with her, and she was scared to death of guns, but after spending some time on the range, then she felt confident. Because what I try to explain to people is a gun is a tool. It's a hammer, it's a knife, it's a shovel. The tool is not what's dangerous, it's the person behind it. But if you learn about it, that doesn't mean that you have to own one, or you have to be a guns rights supporter. All it is knowledge. And that's all I want people to do, is to have the knowledge on how to handle firearms if they're thrown in that position.
Right. And I totally respect that. I mean, the one thing about guns with me is I've never been a hunter. My father-in-law's pro guns, pro firearms, and I'm almost the opposite. They make me nervous. They make me nervous in the hands of the wrong people. But someone like yourself, absolutely. It's an art. It's a skill. It's something that you've used to defend your country, society, all this positive stuff. If you don't mind me asking, and if you don't feel like answering it, I'm completely fine. But what's your view on gun laws now? I mean, with especially automatic weapons being,
I believe that the need for high-powered, semi-automatic guns, AR-15s and some of these, if the lawmakers decide that we retain the right to be able to have those, they should at least be forced to pass all the background tests, take a proficiency test, and be able to show that they're competent with it. And hopefully in the process, if they have any type of lingering mental issues or anything that pops up, they will keep people from having these guns. Because again, that gun itself is not going to jump up and shoot people, but in the wrong hands, any weapon can end up causing a lot of damage. With the recent one, it was a handgun and a shotgun. So now is it going to be, okay, now we need to ban all the handguns and all the shotguns. I guess in a perfect world, there would be a way to do that, but it isn't. And there are so many firearms that are out there. If you ban them, the only people who won't have them will be the law-abiding citizens, because the criminals will still have them. If you look at some states where the right to carry is a little more lenient, the amount of crime is lower, only because a lot of times the bad guys realize these people have guns also. So before I'm going to do this, I better think a little harder about it and make sure that I'm in a position to where, I have the upper hand. There's recently the guy that went into, I think it was a restaurant, shot it up, and then as he came out, 2 people in the parking lot who legally owned guns engaged him and killed him. And I'm thinking, that's what you want to see. You want to see it being used like that. Nobody else was killed as a result of these 2 citizens shooting this guy. But the idea of taking guns away from everybody, unfortunately, then only the bad guys are going to have them, which will create a bigger problem.
That was my father-in-law's exact example. I mean, he's got a handgun license. He has for decades, and I'm not saying he carries 24/7, but he does have in his home, and he claims, he goes, it's for protection. He goes, I'm obviously scared about all these lunatics out there, and if someone's going to invade my home with your kids here when they're visiting, I want to make sure that I know, 1, how to operate, but 2, that I have a means to protect myself. So I couldn't agree with it anymore. I think what's really happened, everyone's just so freaked out, especially with all the school shootings. And I know I'm a parent. God forbid if my kids, you don't even want to bring it up, but
we were talking about it, and in Canada, there's a lot of people getting shot too. Like a friend of mine's in Toronto, guy gets shot below his hotel, and now people are using cars. People are running people down with cars, right? That's what happened in Toronto as well. So, it's not just about the weapons.
No, I was just going to say, if you backtrack on that, it's about the person's mental capacity that's doing this. They have an issue, whatever it might be, and they're going to use whatever means they have to hurt people. And that, you could do as much or more damage running over people with a car as you could, with a firearm. So, unfortunately, you can't control crazy. That's the issue that we're dealing with. The question I always get from, probably more from actors and often from crew members on sets, they're telling me they're thinking about buying a gun. And I always say, all right, there's 3 questions that you have to be able to answer. And if you can't answer any of these, don't get one. First off, if I buy a gun, will I learn how to properly use it and train on a fairly regular basis? Every couple of months, go to the range, fire whatever 20 rounds, just so that you remember how the firearm works. Number 2, especially if you have children, do you have someplace at home where you can lock that gun up? And number 3, if and when the bad guy does come in your home, do you have it within you to take somebody's life? And if you cannot answer yes to all of those, don't buy a gun. Because all you're doing is setting yourself up for something bad to go wrong.
Is there any type of follow-up process? Someone turns around, we get a driver's license and then that's kind of it. What's funny is I've had the same driver's license picture since I'm 16 when I got my junior license. I'm 41 now. I carry my grandfather's driver's license. No, seriously, I carry my grandfather, God rest his soul, his driver's license to this day. I know he got his license and never, at a certain point, he wasn't able to drive a car anymore, yet he's still holding a license. Right. With a handgun, don't you, or a rifle, do you believe that maybe that would be a great protocol to establish where, say, every year you have to go in for a mental test, a skills test, and you have to prove and you have to renew that? Do they have that already, or is that not something they don't even have?
In California, which is probably as strict a state as there is for firearms, they currently do not have that, but I wouldn't be surprised to see them trying to get something like that passed. I think it's like the driver's license issue. At a certain point in time, they need to look at some of the people that are driving cars out there. And again, I think that if there are relatives or friends of someone that goes, this guy's acting really freaking weird, and I know he's got a bunch of guns, maybe you drop a dime on the local police department, and there's a policy in place that will cause that person to have to show that they still have the mental capacity to own and handle a firearm. But again, now you're getting into an area that I think will be extremely difficult to implement.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk to Chick a bit about. We've talked a lot about guns, but I want to talk about the acting craft, because I know you spent a lot of time on that, and you were trained by some competent people. And what can you tell us about that experience and where you're going with that, and how it's similar or dissimilar to your previous policing activities?
Well, along the way, right from the very first movie that I worked on, that's with Steven Seagal, Out for Justice, I was offered the opportunity to be in it. And I had a very small little part in it. And again, I had been interested in the acting thing since high school. And I said, boy, this is kind of cool. And fortunate for me, I've been in a lot of films along the way. When I first met Benicio, it was training him for a movie called The Way of the Gun back in the 90s. He suggested that I go see his acting teacher, a guy named Arthur Mendoza here in LA, who Benicio studied with for years. So I went and I trained with him for 7 years, did a lot of plays around town. I believe I understand the process of acting. I have an agent. I go out, get parts occasionally, and it's, thank God I don't need it to pay the bills, right? But I enjoy doing it. It's a lot of fun. And like anything, if you want to be an actor, learn the acting process. I don't care. I mean, there are many, many acting teachers out there. I suggest people go see several at different times. Study with somebody for a couple of years, go see somebody else, read some books on it, watch good movies, watch really good actors, and then make a decision if that's something that they want to do and continue on. Because we get, I think, especially in LA, everybody who was somebody in high school, they were the lead in the high school plays, right? Everybody comes to LA to be an actor. And I've been at some of these auditions, both there auditioning and on the other side, watching people come in to read for parts, and you'll get 20 people that look exactly the same. They're the best looking guy or woman from their high school class, and they did all the plays, but they're all in California. They're all in Los Angeles here looking to be an actor. What differentiates one from the other is you can tell when somebody's taken the time and have actually learned the craft, whether they learned it in college or they took classes on their own, but they walk in and you suddenly kind of go, whoa, they actually know what they're doing besides being, either attractive or good looking, whatever it might be. So I'm just a believer, no matter what it is, whether it's firearms, whether it's lifting weights, whether it's running a marathon, acting, take the time to study, to practice and train.
You got to have a passion for it. It's like anything else. I mean, I've been training people for 19 years, and I never did it because I didn't get involved. I didn't become a trainer to become a billionaire. It's like, fortunately, I think that's ridiculous. I would have gotten into finance or oil or something like that and crossed my fingers. But I'm obviously on a very good track right now, and things are going well. But through the entire path of this, I've never lost my love for it. I've never lost my love for helping people, the process. And a lot of these principles that I tell people to apply, focus on what you have to do today, set a long-term plan, start at the finish. You know what I'm saying? Like, when you make a mistake, get back on. This simple process that I'm asking people to follow to either drop weight, gain weight, get you to your aesthetic goal, your goal of winning a World Series, whatever it might be, athlete or not athlete, it's the same process. I feel like in life, if we take something that we're really good at and we peel back the layers and we look at how did we get good at that, it's by following a process and enjoying that process day in and day out. It's trainers that I talk to every day. They might be great at training. They may look great, all the stuff, but the same principles that they put into that, they did not put into their finances or managing their bank account. They're like, well, why aren't I good at that? I'm like, well, look, you took two completely different approaches. So I think at the end of the day, like, the reason why you became great at what you do is because you you loved it, and you loved, there was a part of you that really loved, being great at what you're great at. And now that you're able to implement this in other people's lifestyle and actually see a finished product has to be pretty rewarding itself. I mean, it's got to be great for you to be able to watch someone like Benicio on the screen nailing a role and knowing that you had your finger in it, correct?
Oh, no, absolutely. And again, working with someone like Benicio, he is more prepared than anybody that's on set. He's more prepared than the director, the DP, other actors. He works it hard, and it shows every part that he does. But just to tailgate on what you're saying, that should be true in everything that we do. Most people don't do that, obviously. We show up for work, and how many people actually like the job that they have? I am ecstatic to be able to say that for 26 years on the police department, there wasn't one day that I didn't want to go to work. I enjoyed it for 26 years. And I also feel the same way about what I do now. I like going to work. I like the interaction with the people that are there and the opportunity to teach somebody something that they don't know and have them respect, whether it's the profession of law enforcement officer or a firearm or whatever it might be. Then I feel as if I've done something good, not just for them, but for everybody that they're going to come in contact with in the future.
Yeah. What does your fitness routine look like now, Chick? Because when you're in New York, you got to go visit Don.
Well, no, I wish I was in New York now, out there earlier, obviously with Benicio, but didn't have the time to get over there to the gym. No, I hit the gym, I'm guessing 4 to 5 times a week, at least. Sometimes I get there every day.
Nice.
I do a lot of, spinning classes. I used to run. I did a couple of marathons here in Los Angeles, but between that, rappelling, fast roping, run around with all the gear, the knees are not what they used to be. So I find things that are a little easier. I get in the pool, try to do that, still hit the weights. But for me, the most important part is what I'm putting in my mouth, because if you keep the weight off, a lot of the other stuff in life is so much easier. I've got friends that, these guys were studs on the police department. I worked SWAT with them and everything. And they're, 30 pounds heavier than they used to be. And they spend their day sitting in front of a television or whatever. And I'm just saying, dude, what happened, man? And he goes, I don't want to work out anymore. And I said, okay, well, just back away from the kitchen for a minute or two and do that. But nobody wants to. It's very difficult to tell people that, especially friends and family. You're getting a little heavy. But for me, that's what I try to do. I'm still maybe 5 pounds off what I was on the department. And I just want to be busy. I do a lot of walking. I live down by the beach, so I'm down at the beach all the time, bike riding down there. I just want to be busy. That's all. Keep the body moving.
It's really a nice approach to take. And, unfortunately, a lot of the guys that you worked with were probably affiliating their fitness level with the days of you guys going hard, 7, 8, 9, 10 hours a day. And, what I just try and tell people is break a sweat for 10 minutes. If you absolutely hate it, figure out an activity, figure out a way to break a sweat for 10 minutes. Know what the hell you're putting into your mouth, as you said, and you'll see in a short period of time things are going to move along a little bit quicker than you ever expected it to. So it's refreshing to hear you say that. Like Derek said, whenever you make a trip into New York, if you got any clients that you're working with by yourself, please feel free to come by, use my gym, call it your home, come exercise on your own, do what you got to do. We got some cryotherapy and some cool little stuff here too that you'll love. It's all on me. But,
I appreciate the offer. I really do.
And really can't thank you enough for your time and again for your service. And it's incredible. When Derek went through your resume, it's spectacular. Pretty phenomenal. We're really honored to have you on today. So thank you very much.
Well, Don, I appreciate it very much, and good luck with this.
Thank you. This is gonna be great. Derek, thank you, bud.
Yeah. I'll hope to see you very soon, Chick.
You got it, Derek. Take care of yourself.
Chick,
see you, buddy.
Touch,
You got it. All right. Bye-bye.